Thank you for joining another episode of ILTA News. My name is Beth Stuebe, and I am the Director of Publications. And I am joined by what appears to be the largest panel we've ever had on ILTA News. And we are thrilled to talk about a brand new survey. And here to introduce themselves as our panel. Joy, please kick it off.
Thank you, Beth Ann. My name is Joy Heath. I'm the CEO of ILTA, which is my dream job. I've been in legal technology since 1981, but we're always really, really happy to partner with Brad Blickstein and the team at the involved in the Legal Value Network in AI surveys, other surveys, and providing real data that helps us drive technology decision making. So happy to be on the panel today.
Hi, and I'm David Cambria. I am with Baker McKenzie. Prior to Baker McKenzie, I served in various in-house roles on the law department operations side. I have worked with Brad and this group on this survey, but prior to that, Brad and I had put out and continue to put out the law department operations survey. And we started that about 13 years ago.
And I'm Brad Blickstein. As David mentioned, we've been collaborating for many years on the law department operations survey, the annual law department operations survey. And now we are thrilled to be collaborating with our friends at Legal Value Network on the legal pricing and project management survey. And we're especially excited because those two groups interact, which means that our data interacts, which we think is really interesting for the marketplace.
Hi, I'm Ende. I'm the Chief Value Officer at Goulston Storrs. I'm also a co-founder and officer at the Legal Value Network.
And my name is Keith Maziarek. I'm Director of Pricing and Legal Project Management at Katten, Muchin, Rosenman. And like Chris, I'm also a co-founder and an officer and a board member at Legal Value Network. And really happy to be here.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. I know we have a lot to cover, so we'll try to keep moving. One of the first things I want to do is say, again, congratulations. This is an awesome survey. As a survey professional, I think that this continues to add value in a marketplace where we haven't really seen a lot of data. So early into the intro, David, you said that this survey was 13 years in the making. That's a pretty long time, and technology certainly changes at a rapid pace, especially considering the pandemic. So how are you and Brad, kind of dealing with this? What was the impetus originally to create the survey, and what drove it to publication?
Yeah, so I think early days when we first conceived of the law department operations survey was because there was a lack of consistent knowledge and reporting about what was happening within that function. And so Brad and I had spent a lot of time talking about, wouldn't it be great if we had a data set? Throughout the years, we continued to develop that data set. We continued to do in-person roundtables and webinars. And what we found is, as that survey evolved, so too did the participants. And ultimately, we ended up inviting people like Chris and Heath to those roundtables because those participants in that survey wanted to have a different perspective, the perspective of the law firm professional on how they were dealing with the same set of problems. And then it occurred to me to really say, well, listen, a lot of the questions we're asking of the legal operations professionals, actually we could ask this ever-evolving group on the law firm side of LPPMs. And so Brad and I were kicking around an idea in a much sunnier place than Chicago, and talked about, wouldn't it be great if we asked some of the same questions on a broader scale? Because we'd asked Chris and Keith and some of their colleagues at LVN those questions on a one-on-one basis. They had invited us to participate in their events over the years, and they were always very robust conversations. And so we started to kind of formulate, well, what would that look like? And then we quickly brought in the folks at LVN to kind of help with making sure we have the questions properly tuned, to making sure that we could get kind of the buy-in, that there really wasn't a gotcha moment, but really a moment to figure out where we could collaborate better. And that was about 2.5 years ago when I had actually decided to join a law firm, so my role had changed slightly. But that's really how we came to evolve to the survey and really start that conversation and the road we went on. And as I talked about in the introduction, a lot of the things we had felt and we knew, but a lot of things we were surprised about. And that's what's really made this adventure kind of exciting for us. And it wouldn't have happened, though, without the people participating and taking the survey, my peers on the LDO side, and it wouldn't have happened without my peers taking it on the LPPM side. So for that, we're all very grateful.
Brad, do you have anything to add for this? Any reason that you want to keep going with it?
Yeah, well, it was really serendipitous, right? Because David and I had been thinking about doing what we sort of viewed, what we were calling it, I think, anecdotally ourselves, just the mirror image survey, a survey of the people who serve sort of as a mirror image of legal ops people in law firms. And, we had drafted a questionnaire and we talked about it, but, we have day jobs. So we were kind of getting to it slowly. And then one day when, after Legal Value Network officially formed, Keith called me up and said, so you do the LDO survey. Are you interested in collaborating with us on something similar for our members, for our people? And I said, oh, you mean something like this? And, and the questionnaire was sort of half done already. So it was a serendipitous collaboration, but it's been a good one. And, I believe, and I think we all believe that, like in a lot of ways, the future of the law firm law department relationship is the future of the law department operations, legal pricing, and project management relationship. More and more, we will see that commercial relationship among those two groups. And that's what we're really excited about studying over the years, over the future years, is how those groups evolve and how law departments and law firms evolve in order to change the commercial relationship to consolidate within those groups.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting in the executive summary, Chris Kraft wrote that 57% of IT professionals believe that they have the right tools to do their job. That seems a little high since, sometimes we hear about people saying not having the right tools for their jobs, but it's an interesting statistic that says, quote, further, the data reveals that lawyer resistance to change in technology investments is a top challenge to maturing the price function, and the partner compensation is often misaligned with this decision-making. Chris, why do you think this is the case?
Yeah, Beth, and that's such a interesting area and so much wrapped up in there. So first of all, just in the technology piece, right? I think the first thing I would say is things are moving so fast, right? So as folks in these roles are thinking about what technology they need to do their jobs most effectively, it's this incredible mix of technology that could help you scope better, price better, look at comparable matters better, manage your work better, deliver services more efficiently. There's just so many things that you can think about where technology could help your job. So things are moving so quickly. By the time you start to figure out what you need, what you want, you start to sort of have that moment as a professional going, gosh, I just wish I had this right now, right? It takes time to think about it. And to frankly collaborate with the folks that are making the technology. So, one of our partners in the survey, Intapp, has been spending a lot of time, with our groups talking about what do people need? How do we build it? And that landscape is constantly changing. So things are just moving so quickly, I think, that sometimes the natural I wish I had it right this second. There's also a lot in there with data, right? There's so much underlying data that's critical to making technology work correctly. And I think a lot of us are continuing to think about how to improve the data quality. So systems, your financial systems, your experience systems, your CRM systems, your staffing systems, all of that plays together. There's a lot there. And I think on the partner piece, look, I do think that there's kind of a continued evolution of thinking about how do you become more efficient and how does technology play a role in that? But then that leads to really difficult questions about how do you price that work fairly? How do you do it so your clients see the benefit of the efficiencies of the different model, but also in a way that works well for the law firms and is commercially fair? And so I think that's an area we continue to work and improve over time.
I think that continued efficiency is something we've talked an awful lot about. And Joy, within ILTA, we talk about continued efficiency, cost, actuals, and the role that LPPMs continue to play and expanding in those roles. How do you think this is going to continue in the future? Do you think this is a direct change to something we're seeing from firms, either because of or in addition to the pandemic, or do you think that the market will just need to evolve?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I'm gonna start answering it by going back to something Brad was saying about changing the relationship between outside counsel and law firms. And I would say that there are a whole bunch of verbs you could use there, not just change, mature, cement, make it stickier, because that all comes together. So part of what I think law firms are starting to realize is that legal project management and pricing and process improvement not only improve their efficiency, but if they do it right, it ties them more closely to the client. And one of the ongoing conversations, and a lot of you have been part of these, I know David Cunningham has kind of been leading this charge about metrics and about how you match law department metrics to law firm metrics. And these conversations all merge together. So legal process improvement, project management, pricing inextricably is linked to metrics, and the disconnect between law departments and law firms on metrics, what to measure, how to measure, what success looks like, that's where the real opportunity is. So the fact that we're introducing these functions in order to make our operations as law firms run better, there's also an incredibly important stickiness and client service component that's the real transformational piece, I think.
And I would just add, if I might, to those comments, I'd add scalability as well. So all
Yes,
of those things
great.
are foundational, but and the law firms are really working hard to try to deliver on a lot of those things.
Mhm.
And the legal operations professionals are working hard to mature in those areas, but it's still a very siloed approach. And that siloed approach means we haven't gotten to the scale that it could gain the momentum it needs to continue to evolve at a much faster pace.
Yeah, scale's a great point.
Heath, there's a piece of data in the survey that I found incredibly interesting. This is the top 3 challenges you are currently facing to managing the pricing function. And the data piece is that 53% of attorneys are resistant to change, while a further 31% identify technology to improve process and efficiency as an impediment. Do you think that this is a scalability problem, as David and Joy believe, or do you think that even further that this is trending differently historically and it'll take a lot more to get attorneys on board?
I think it's a little bit of both, actually. It was funny when you referenced David's excuse me, response to that question. I was thinking the same thing in relation to this data point, because when you look at what the change management exercises to get lawyers to actually change what they're doing, especially in the context of the way things are developing now, there's so many more options from a technology standpoint to increase efficiency, to leverage data. Those are a lot of things that were not typically sort of contemplated in, well, for sure not in what you learn in law school, but as many of the partners now who drive a lot of the change that happens in law firms in terms of the way work is done and process is done, they weren't taught how to really integrate those things and synthesize them into their day. So it does cause a problem. But I think what you're finding, that's one issue, is getting the attorneys to understand the benefits it can bring to their practice and really articulating that to the client, because that's really where you get a lot of that pull to help spur that adoption, right? The other issue on the 31% of identifying technology solutions challenge is that, we see articles all the time about the amount of investment that's going into legal tech now, right? Like venture capital, there's some private equity rolling in there. And I keep seeing that map of all the different logos of all the different solutions get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's starting to look like that map of the universe, right? So there's a lot of different things to try and navigate your way through to find out, okay, what is best integrated through other systems? How can I leverage certain things for my specific type of practices where we have a need, or the personalities or the teams of lawyers that we have that would be able to leverage those to the best of their ability and the highest and best use. Interestingly, one last other point I would pull out from the survey to correlate here. We talk about how getting attorneys to change their behavior is the biggest challenge, the 53%. The interesting counterpoint to that is we had another question in the survey about I get all the support I need from the executive team at my firm or within my legal department, right? And I can say that I answered yes on that. I answered very highly when I took the survey. And there's 75% of the LPPMs that agree with that. So what you really have is this bottleneck of approval versus then being able to propagate and then to borrow from David's answer to scale what those changes are and make sure they get throughout the organization so you can really leverage them at scale and really recognize what the benefits are. There's a variety of benefits that result from that. So,
do you have any suggestions to how to clear that bottleneck, anyone? Because I think that that's probably something that many of our constituents would love to find the answer to.
I'll start off really quickly, and this is a simple one, but what I've found through my 20 some years now working with lawyers, they're very rational, logical people. So at least you can appeal to that rational side. And I would actually ask, David and Chris are sort of like plants in this for that point, because they're the converted, right? But you can tell, you can easily demonstrate, a lot of times qualify and quantify where there's a benefit that comes out from either that results from integrating different types of technology or different processes into the service delivery model, right? That's an easy thing to make. That's an easy point to make. The trick then is getting them to adopt it. And some of that is just sort of the resistance to change. There's, incentives. There's always this, I'd say there's always one other challenge in the back of partners' minds that I find a lot is they say, well, if I make that more efficient, then I've got a lot of associates that I need to keep busy. That's going to be a challenge for me from a management standpoint. So there's some of those sort of legacy business model issues that have to be addressed. That I think the more that you can appeal to the rational side, they'll see the business case for making some of these changes. And if you can come up with solutions that are fit to each different team, you'll start getting more of those adopters. And I don't think it's ever going to be a flip the switch and today everybody's automated. But every little bit of progress you can make in integrating some of these solutions into different practices, that just helps build momentum and scale across the firm. So.
And I think Joy and Chris touched upon this, but I think it's worth mentioning again, some standardization of language or terms across the functions and across the practice areas, I think would go a long way towards the entire ecosystem putting in data points that could help us move the needle in terms of insights. What I found in my roles is that oftentimes the corporate law department is measuring very different things than a law firm is measuring. The data exists, but unless there's a purpose and a reason to have one side or the other continue to propagate or feed the beast of data because they need an output, it's just not going to happen. And so as the conversations evolve around those standardizations and around those data points that are the common language or overlap, I think you'll start to see more adoption that Heath points out as well.
Yeah, Beth, and you give me the opportunity to deliver one of my favorite baseball quotes here. It was the baseball manager, Billy Martin, who said once, there's always 5 guys on the team that love you, and there's always 5 guys on the team that hate you. And the trick is keeping the 5 guys who hate you away from the 15 guys who haven't decided yet. And that's a bit of a lesson here, right? Like there's some partners in your firm, some lawyers that are a lost cause. Like leave them alone, but don't let them ruin it for everybody else, and focus on the people that the people that can be your ambassadors and the people whose minds maybe you can change.
I will be including your email address in the notes so those attorneys can find you.
As well as anyone who hates the Yankees, and that could be a really big group.
Joy and Brad, one of the kind of interesting pieces of data in the survey says that 83% of those firms believe that they're doing a really good job. Do you see that that is accurate from, the space, Brad, you and I sit with for some surveys, and Joy, that you're seeing within our ILTA membership?
Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, I think that's a place where there's a pretty big communication disconnect. I think that law firms are likely doing good work with technology on behalf of their clients, but I feel like it's kind of often spotty and erratic. It's this practice area is doing some really cool stuff. That one's not. This partner is doing some really interesting stuff. A lot of others are not. So I think that and that's moving in the right direction, and more firms are adopting good technology in order to benefit their clients. And I'm actually very bullish on us seeing a lot more of that over the next couple of years. But I think it still is a little slow go. I was a little surprised that such a big number self-reported that they think they're really doing well there. I think I think and obviously if you ask the clients, they don't believe it so strongly either. So there's definitely a gap there. I think it's maybe a little bit of a combination of client frustration, because clients are often frustrated in general, and law firms maybe not quite understanding what all the opportunities they maybe have to deliver value through technology to their clients.
Yeah, and I think if you did exactly the same set of survey questions with a different role within the same organization, you probably get really different results. Just like the 57% number of people that think they have all the tools that they need. Again, different people in different roles answering that, I think would have answered it in a different way. Some of the things that law firms have to get their heads around, though, as I talk to inside counsel, one of the things I hear over and over again is we want to use our tools. We don't want to be forced into a tool that the law firm is using, and we need the law firm to be prepared to use 8 different tools for the same thing if it's required for 8 different clients. And depending on which practice groups within the law firm are getting investment, whether they're the squeaky wheel or, of course, the rational way to do it is to look at practices that are pretty profitable, that could be really profitable with a little technology, or ones that could increase realization significantly with a little technology. And of course, that needs to be rational. But if you take really heavily invested in practice areas as opposed to ones where there's underinvestment, it would also be interesting to look at that on both the client and the law firm side to see what the satisfaction is, because we know that it's not all created equal. My management and technology committees used to say to me in my 28 years at Sidley, you know, we have to look at, when we buy this $500,000 piece of technology that's going to benefit the corporate group, but it's coming out of the pocketbooks of all the practice groups. So we got to make sure we're doing things that make sense and benefiting the overall partnership as well as the client.
I would just to build on that really quickly, a common platform would be, you know, a huge benefit as far as getting a lot more critical mass and adoption. And that's something that, you know, like I said, that map of the universe of all the different companies, that does cause a challenge because some different tools offer different functions or metrics that others don't. And if you have, you know, our firm has 5,000 clients. Let's say 10% of them each have 3 different, you know, tools they like to use. That's a huge technology platform or a technology sort of ecosystem or stack to have to deal with, right? So it does make it difficult to kind of help implement or spur that adoption. There was one other thing I was going to mention about that too. The firms, I think that you would see a lot more acknowledgement on the client side that firms are doing a better job if we were able to get more, not that clients don't ask for it, but I think a clearer message or a clearer path to being able to define, we need this particular solution or this particular capability delivered in this way through these tools. I know firms, I just speak from the firm perspective, that we're always looking to comply with client demand. And if there's specificity to that and clarity, I think it makes it a lot easier. So you can help kind of, initiate a lot of that momentum in that way too, which correlates with that other data point where we said that law departments will be the source of innovation. I think both sides agreed with that, the majority. That's that sort of pull of innovation and maturity. I think that would be another sort of influential factor. So.
And I think the one other piece though, Keith, just to add on to that though, is a lot of the clients don't feel like they have the level of sophistication that law firms have in their back offices. And they're also looking for them to lead. They're saying, help me figure this out. Yes, I think we're going to drive innovation because here's the problem set. But law firms, please help me figure this out. You've got this massive investment you've made in IT, whose sole purpose is to help deliver legal services, where in a corporation, oftentimes those IT functions view the law department as, you know, the 10th on the list of 5 things they have to get done. And so they're looking for the law firms to help lead in that discussion as well and say, please be proactive. And so while the law firms are listening and being reactive, I think a lot of people are left frustrated on the LDO side because they are looking for that leadership and guidance.
Absolutely. We're bad at communicating those things historically. Like, here's the menu of things, what do you want to use? Yeah, that's usually a kind of a blind spot. So yep. Totally agree.
Well, as we wrap up, I just would like to ask each of you, what was your most interesting or kind of unusual piece of data that you saw within the survey? I know Joy and I have talked a bit about this, and there's so much there for our ILTA membership to digest. But David, Chris, Keith, what did you guys see that was most innovative or interesting for you that you weren't expecting?
I'm happy to jump in, Beth, and just give a kind of a really basic one. I was amazed at how much opportunity that there is out there on really low-hanging fruit, right? There's some really hard, complicated things that we have to work together to figure out. But to see some of the data around, the fact that, you have 41% of clients say that they've let a law firm go for not following guidelines, but only 5% of firms think that. Like, there's a massive communication gap. The fact that both sides kind of point the finger on feedback, right? Law firms saying my clients don't give me good feedback. Clients saying my law firms don't ask for feedback. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I just come back to the basics and say, if we just talk more and have better conversations, we're going to start to move so much more quickly in the right direction. So that was one of the big takeaways for me.
I would echo that. I mean, I have nothing else to add, but that to me was one of the more surprising comments, especially given all of the conversations we all tend to have year after year after year on these things, that there's still this great disconnect between, am I getting what I want, or am I communicating what I want? Are the firms listening, and vice versa? And the whole disconnect to me was just fascinating. So that I would highlight the same data point.
I think really quick, just to follow on that, because I don't know what Brad's going to say, and this is mine kind of goes in the same theme. I think that one of the encouraging things that was pleasantly surprising was the level of peace of mind and mutual respect that both the LDOs and LPMs have for each other, and the fact that the interaction with those teams, where those people are present on both sides, is acknowledged to be much more productive and much more sort of rational and leads to the best results. So I think that, if we can do a better job on a lot of these problems that can be fixed by communication, that sort of collaborative spirit and that recognition that on the other side, you've got somebody who can be your partner in coming to a solution, was a really reassuring, I guess, statistic that came out of this one from the questions.
Yeah, and I think the amplifying factor around that is going to be data and metrics, which is actually why we were so happy that our friends at Intapp agreed to partner with us on the survey, because that is a big part of their business. And that's also part of the answer to the change management question you asked us earlier, Beth Ann, which is that, as reluctant as you might be as a line partner at a law firm, when someone comes at you with real data about why something needs to be different, lawyers are precedential. It's hard to, that's an easier way to change. So that's why we're excited to work with Intapp, and where we see a lot of this going is as both sides build better data models and collect better data. I think we're going to see amplified and accelerated change.
I would highlight two things. One, I was pleasantly surprised by the response rate. I'm always happy to see people participate, and this shows engagement, right? If they weren't interested in it, they would engage in it, and they want the data, so they participate in the survey so they get the data back. So I won't say necessarily surprised, but I always like to comment on those things. The second one is I was very surprised to see that only 52% of LDOs think they're doing a good job. And that doesn't necessarily feel consistent with the rest of the data and why they don't feel like they're doing a good job. What's at the bottom of that? When we all know in the industry from the inside, the whole concept of legal operations has been transformative. So I think maybe that there's lots of things we could speculate on. I'm not someone in that role, but that number was a surprise to me.
Well, thank you all incredibly for taking the time to sit down with us. This survey is amazing, and I really hope that all of our listeners, watchers, and ILTAs go out and download the survey. Brad, David, Christopher, Heath, Joy, thank you all so much for your time. And we'll have a response area if anyone would like to ask questions that they can reach out to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.